Alright, this video is brought to you by our new website, WeBuyGuns.com. If you are considering selling a firearm or firearms collection, please log on to our website, create an account, and submit your firearms for an offer request. With that offer, you will be provided with offer certificates, which you can take with you to competing gun stores in your area to try and leverage yourself a better deal. If you're unable to get a better deal, go ahead and sell it to us. We do provide you with the shipping label, and we will pay you with either a paper check or ACH direct deposit to make the process as easy for you as possible. So please remember, go check us out at WeBuyGuns.com. All right, remember the format of this video is we start with most common and move through least common as the video progresses. Starting us off with our first spot, we have a firearm that comes to us from a viewer in Virginia. So thank you so much for selling this one to us. This is a Magnum Research Micro Desert Eagle 380 single stack pistol meant for the defensive concealed carry market. Now, this one would start back in about the early 2000s with a company called ZBI in the Czech Republic. They were looking at creating a sidearm in the Czech Republic, of course, for their local police to use as a secondary backup, also for the civil population to use for concealed carry. Now, this is a 380, and here in the United States, we know these as being 380s, but they also had a 9x18 Makarov variation in Europe as well. In about 2008, Magnum Research would get, the rights to market these here in the United States as the Micro Desert Eagle. So these have been on the market here for, a little over a decade, about 12, 13, 14 years or so. Now, interestingly enough, they do have a pretty high price point even today used on the market. These are retailing right now between about $500 and $600. They are a very, very, very small, deep concealment 380. They are relatively lightweight with an aluminum alloy frame, single stack magazine, steel slide, and steel barrel. They do have a pretty heavy trigger pull, but there is a lack of a thumb safety, so that's really serving as your safety option. But it is a sort of shrouded concealed hammer working on a double action only, the really, really long trigger pull. But anyway, a lot of people I know do like these and use them as either a backup or their primary concealed carry firearm. The ergonomics on the grip are very small. I have small hands, but even with this magazine in, I can just get 2 fingers on here. Somebody with slightly larger hands may only even be able to get 1 finger on here, with the added fact that a small, lightweight firearm like this in 380 is going to be relatively snappy. It is definitely a package that's going to be difficult to hold on to. You do get an extended magazine here. Maybe I can barely fit 3 fingers. I'm probably still only working with 2 fingers on here. This actually makes it feel worse to me. But anyway, there it is. Kind of a weird oddball. I do not see too many of these come through my store. This is maybe the 5th or 6th one we've had in here in the past 7 or 8 years. So still pretty odd and unique, and I thought worth sharing with you guys on this video. So there is the first one, a Magnum Research Micro Desert Eagle 380. Okay, up next I have a very interesting rifle that comes to us from a local customer. Now, this is just a standard model K98K Mauser, which was the standard issue rifle of Germany in World War II. Bolt action, 5-round internal magazine, 8mm Mauser. Now, this one does have a little bit of an interesting history, and because we know about different markings and different sort of post-war refurbs that we see on these rifles, we can kind of deduce a little bit of the history and the lineage of this rifle. First of all, this is a Portuguese contract dated 1941 rifle. Now, as far back as about 1931, Germany had contracted with Portugal for commercial production Gewehr rifles. Now, I had read in some sources that the reason for this was to get production allowances or at least trade rights to cork, which was common in Portugal but not common in Germany. There was a need for cork, of course, in the World War I war effort, and as Germany starts rebuilding its armaments in the late 1930s, there's a need for this as well, and into World War II as well, beginning 1939. So, in about 1940 to 1941, Mauser at Oberndorf had moved from standard Gewehr production for the contracts to the K98K production rifles. Now, in the interwar period, we've talked on this channel multiple times about how militaries are moving from these standard longer configuration rifles to something a little bit more compact and easier, a little less unwieldy, for example. The K98K is a direct example of that coming out of Germany. So they had moved that production, those contracts for Portuguese rifles, into K98K production in about 1940. Now, by 1941, we have the German invasion of Russia with Operation Barbarossa. Germany is realizing they need all the war material and equipment that they can get. They had been producing these at Mauser Oberndorf for Portugal, but realized instead of, hey, let's fulfill our contracts with Portugal and send these over there, let's go ahead and just keep them and use them here in German military service. So that's what they did, and a lot of these would go to the Eastern Front. This one likely did, because this one was also Russian captured. I could talk about how we know that, but what would basically happen is when Russia would capture K98K Mausers, whether they were picked up on battlefields or surrendered to Russian forces in 1945 after the fall of Berlin, they would take these rifles, they would strip them down to most of their basic components, dip them in sort of this motor oil style, it's kind of a euphemism there, but they would, this very thick black type finish, dip them in this coating and then set them in storage lockers and warehouses for decades until about the 1980s and 90s, when they would be pulled out, reassembled, and sent over to the United States as surplus, which this one was, denoted by the American importation mark underneath the barrel here. They would typically put this sort of shellac coating on the stock, and then you would usually see electric pencil markings. Stock would be stamped with the serial number from the receiver. This one does not have any electric penciling on it, but it does have that iconic Russian shellac with a deep black finish, and the Russian sort of cross rifle X mark, capture marking on the receiver as well. So quite an interesting bit of history. Meant for Portuguese contract, went to the Eastern Front most likely, then was captured by the Russians, sent back to Russia, disassembled, refinished, reassembled, and then sold into the United States commercial market. So if you know about markings and things to look for, you can follow down sort of the likely history of something like this. So this rifle has probably seen a lot of interesting history in its life. Now, when we get into values of K98 Mausers, if you have original German, all matching K98 Mausers that have not been, import marked or anything like that, those are typically the most expensive, and depending on what production company manufactured it, those are going to range, go higher in value, but those typically start at around $1,500, $2,000 and go way up from there. Now, the Portuguese contract firearms, because there were so few of them, and because most of them did see German service, and because they were commercial production type Mausers with a really rich original blue finish and the really deep markings on them, those in all matching, unmolested condition are very uncommon in the United States and demand a premium. Those I see go for $3,000 plus if all matching. Russian captured standard Mausers typically start at about $600, $700 and go up from there. Now this one is a Portuguese contract Russian captured, so I have not seen too much information on the market as to the value of something like this, but my guess would be under $1,000. But it does have the interesting history there. Because it's Russian captured, it is mismatched, does not have its original finish, it is import marked, and those are all typical detractors when you're talking about collectability, but it does have the oddity of being one of the very rare 1941 Portuguese contract rifles. So interesting firearm, happy to get that in and share it with you guys, and that is a K98K Mauser Portuguese contract. Okay, up next is an interesting rifle that comes to us from a viewer in Pennsylvania, so thank you so much for selling this one to us. This is a Desert Tech MDRX 308 bullpup rifle. Now, the story with this would begin back in 2014 when Desert Tech would debut the MDR standard bullpup carbine and bullpup rifles at SHOT Show, and it was met with a lot of enthusiasm in the market. People were excited for this new innovative bullpup design. There has not been a lot in the bullpup arena since the Steyr AUG and the IWI Tavor series. Very limited market there, and this is going to be something that was going to be new, modular, and interesting to the table, especially if we're talking back in 2014. Now, as the years would go by, 2015, 2016, 2017, consumers were getting a little bit frustrated because the MDR had still not come out onto the market, the long-anticipated rifle. Finally, they started doing pre-orders in 2017, and by 2018, they were pretty well out on the market, but it didn't take long before these started getting a very bad reputation. In late 2018, Ian from Forgotten Weapons and Carl from InRange TV on InRange TV put out a video about 45 minutes long, basically tearing the thing apart. It wasn't like they were trying to find issues. They were trying to do a simple range demonstration, field testing of the rifle, and it was failing in many different ways, mainly with the ejection. This does have an interesting forward ejection port on it. They were having gas setting issues. They were having trouble getting it to run a lot of different available ammunition, commercial ammunition on the market. They couldn't get it to run steel case at all. So the thing was a complete train wreck and disaster, and at a $2,000 to $2,500 price was definitely something that was going to be a flop. Now, Desert Tech, to their credit, instead of denying the issues or attacking Carl and Ian, put out a video of their own addressing that yes, they were disheartened by the issues, and they were going to do what they could to address them and make a better product. So they actually did go back and start redesigning a lot of elements of the rifle. They documented a lot of that process. And then in 2020 had come out with the MDRX rifle, which is here, sort of like a second generation. They did different things to improve upon it, like the gas system was improved, the trigger was improved, the ejection system was improved, the build construction quality and material used was improved. They added some different systems, like they could do either the forward eject or a standard side eject option. They have the caliber conversions that are out now. Trying to think, to my memory, that's about it. Now, they also came out with a 20-inch version on the MDRX pattern. The original is just the standard 16-inch carbine length, 16 to 18 with the muzzle device on there. Actually, since it has come out, it has been deemed to be a really good, very reliable and effective product. You do have a barrel change system, so you have these two lock screws on the left-hand side of the rifle with an unlocking lever here. The tool to do that is in the box with the firearm. Take off the handguard, the barrel and gas system come off. You can swap it out with a shorter barrel length or do a caliber conversion if you want to do that as well. You can change the ejection pattern of the firearm left to right, or side eject or forward eject, however you want to do that as well. So very interesting modular design. Now, of course, these are still not too easy to get on the market, and the used price is pretty much consistent with the new price of around $2,000 or so, plus or minus, depending on the caliber, what you have, condition, and things like that. Originally, these were offered into the 5.56 and the 308 7.62x51 NATO. They have also come out with the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 300 Blackout variants as well. So a lot of different options out there on the market, flat dark earth or all black. So interesting firearm, not one that I anticipated having in here anytime soon, but happy to get this one in used and share it with you guys. So that is the Desert Tech MDRX bullpup rifle. Okay, up next is another classic revolver from Colt. This one coming to us from a viewer in Ohio. So thank you so much for selling this one to us. Now, everybody loves a classic Colt snake gun, and what I have here is a Colt King Cobra 357 Magnum revolver. This one manufactured in 1990, has the royal blue finish and the 4-inch barrel. Now, Colt would start manufacturing the Colt King Cobra as a sort of I guess you would say adaptation off of the famous Trooper series of revolvers. These would first hit the market in 1986, and the first production run would go until 1992. Now, an interesting thing about this, as far as Colt snake guns go, this was the first model to first be released in the stainless finish. The blue would come a little bit after early release, or a little bit after initial release. And the stainless finish is mainly what you see these in. The first production run would be 1986 to 1992, and that is the only production run that they offered the blued finish. These would be offered in 2.5, 3, 4, 6, and 8-inch barrel lengths, the 2.5 and the 8-inch being the most uncommon, and the 4-inch like this being the most common. They would have a second production run from 1994 to 1998. Now, in 1994, of course, they had discontinued the blued and had only manufactured this in stainless, and then it would stay out of production from 1998 all the way until 2019, when it would be released again in the refreshed version, or the newer version, whatever you want to call it, the reboot, Colt King Cobra, which is still in production today. There are definite differences between the new production and the original 1980s, 1990 model like this, and maybe one of these days, if I get a Colt King Cobra, a newer one, I can do a comparison with an older one like this. But you can just tell, handling them, feeling them, the ergonomics, the finish, the controls, there's something that's just different about the older snake guns than the newer revised versions, and I don't think I'm alone in saying that. Definitely a beautiful firearm. There's not really a lot of history or much to go over with this, but just been a staple for the Colt, snake gun lineup in the 357. It was usually either the King Cobra or the, of course, the Python, if you wanted to get into a 357 snake gun. This one being the more obtainable and lower price variation. On the market today, the King Cobras tend to start in good condition at about the $1,000 range and go way up from there depending on condition, when it was manufactured, manufacturer, the finish, the barrel length, and things like that. I've even seen like the blue 2.5-inch ones go for like over $3,000, but they made very, very few of those. So anyway, interesting firearm, interesting to get this in and share it with you guys. Undoubtedly a gorgeous firearm, and this one does not seem to have had very much use, but that is a 1990 produced. This was produced in 1990, 4-inch blued Colt King Cobra. Okay, up next is a very unique and very uncommon rifle that comes to us from a viewer in Pennsylvania. This is an Arsenal SAM-7 SF-94E limited edition rifle that's meant to be a copy of the ARM-5F for the U.S. civilian market. Now, Arsenal put out 200 copies of this exact rifle, this exact model, and this is number 76 of that 200, so not too easy to come by. They released these to the market earlier this year, 2021, at I believe a sale price of about $2,000 to $2,500, somewhere in there. So not, inexpensive for what it is compared to just your standard SAM-7 SF-84E series rifle, which has been on the market since about 2013. So the SAM-7 SF was really the closest you could get to the Bulgarian military-used ARM-9F, which uses the similar tubular folding stock. This one's really tight. You would have this pistol grip with a toggle switch for your safety here on this side. You would have your imported furniture and an AK-74 style muzzle brake up here at the front, but a lot of people would take their standard SAM-7 SF, that was the 84E series, and use the ARM-9F furniture and convert them. But this is something that sort of came as assembled and even roll marked ARM-5F. On top, you also get Arsenal's very low profile Picatinny rail. You throw this lever here, which allows this to hinge open, and that's how you can disassemble it. It comes with the ARM style egg beater type muzzle brake up here at the front, the correct furniture with Picatinny rail here, a trigger upgrade, and then of course your roll markings, and that was basically it. Now, a lot of people have sort of criticized this as sort of just a collector's limited edition rifle without really getting much. I think that just the standard SAM-7 SF brand new on the market today is about $1,700, so you're adding between $300 and $500 for a few upgrades: the rail, the trigger, the muzzle device, and I believe that was it. But other than that, it's internally and functionally exactly the same as just your standard SAM-7 SF. In fact, these were just taken from a batch of SAM-7 SFs that they were going to sell anyway. The upgrades were made and then the roll marks were added, and that's really all that makes this rifle. Now, some people speculate that, of course, these are going to be very collectible because there's only 200 of them made, but all they have to do is produce them like this again and issue more, and they can at any time. And Arsenal has actually done that in the past, just changing model names. But this is a very easy modification to do yourself if you find the parts like the rail, the muzzle brake, the trigger upgrade. So you can even just take a standard SAM-7 SF and modify it this way if you like. It just won't have the factory roll markings and serial number unless, you can engrave those yourself, I guess. But interesting rifle. So, interesting for military collectors who want that, provided by Arsenal in this package. Or if you want something that comes from the factory ready to go for your optics, you don't want to take the time to sort of piece it together yourself. So I can see the markets it's serving, but very interesting nonetheless. Very cool rifle, and happy to get that in and share it with you guys. That is the Arsenal SAM-7 SF-94E ARM-5F Collector Series rifle. Okay, up next is a beautiful hunting rifle that comes to us from a viewer in Texas. So thank you so much for selling this one to us. This is a Colt Sauer sporting rifle. This one chambered in .270 Winchester. Now, this would actually be sold in 3 different action types. You have the short action, which was sold in .22, .250, .243, and .308. The medium action, which is what this is, in .25-06, .270, and .30-06. And the Magnum action, which was sold in 7mm, 300 Win Mag, 300 Weatherby, and 375 H&H. Now, the 375 H&H and the 25-06 are the 2 most rare calibers for this rifle. Now, this rifle would actually get its beginning in Germany with Sauer as the Model 80, which would hit the European sporting market in 1970. Now, by the 1970s, there was a big demand amongst the sporting communities really around the world, Europe, the United States, anywhere you had a big sporting community, where people wanted something that was different from the Mauser, which was dominant on the sporting and the military market prior to the 1970s. Now, the Mauser action is known for being a very robust, very strong, durable, and accurate action. However, it is not as precise. The tolerances are not as tight. And people wanted a true sportsman's rifle, not a military rifle that had been repurposed for sporting purposes. Excuse me. So Sauer would get to the drawing board and come up with an action that is actually even coveted today as being likely the most smooth and precise bolt action out there. And this is an incredibly smooth bolt action rifle. Now, they achieve this by having a non-rotating bolt. You have locking wedges actually recessed into the back of the bolt body here, and I'll try and bring this in and show you. So you might see these little wedges sort of inletted here into the bolt. When that's closed and locked and the rifle fired, those wedges actually pop out and lock against the rear receiver ring. So because you don't have locking lugs, you don't have that added friction of that additional material moving inside of the action, and you don't have cammed recesses inside the receiver that those locking lugs turn into, again creating friction. So all you have is a smooth cylinder moving inside of a tube. So it really can't get any smoother than that. And that's how they achieve that. Now, there was some criticism as to the reliability of this action or the strength of this action, but having been on the market for decades, it had proved to be a really good design. Now, as mentioned, Sauer would come out with this as the Model 80 in 1970, and a couple years later, Colt would notice here in the United States and would like to exploit upon its, very positive reputation here in the U.S. market. So they would co-op with Sauer to sell them locally here. And in 1973, these would hit the U.S. consumer market as the Colt Sauer sporting rifle, where they would stay until 1985, and then being discontinued from Colt. Pricing today is kind of all over the place depending on the condition and the caliber. There was also 2 additional models released in the 1980s known as the Model 90 and 92. Those were just some different stock configurations, different calibers, and improvements on the action and the trigger. But the Colt Sauer sporting rifle, typically today on the market, you find them between $1,000 and $2,000. In varying conditions, as these were popular deer rifles, a lot of them have seen a lot of use and have a lot of wear on them. This one's actually in really good condition. If you get unopened in the original box in a rare caliber, I've seen them top out at about the $3,000 range, but mostly you see them between about $1,000 and $2,000 or so. So very interesting rifle, very just undoubtedly a beautiful, well-made, well-manufactured rifle with a really interesting bolt concept. So that is the Colt Sauer sporting rifle, or the Sauer Model 80. Up next, we have another unique pistol that comes to us from a viewer in Texas. So thank you so much for sending this one to us. This is a Russian Makarov PM pistol. And I know we just talked about Makarovs last week, and you're probably also wondering why a Makarov is in the number 7 spot of this video, and I'll explain that. But first, a little bit of history. Post-World War II, Russia's looking at getting a new service sidearm to replace the TT-33 and the Gaunt revolver. The Makarov would be introduced into those trials, would ultimately win, and would be adopted by Russia in 1951. Now, moving into the wars, going into the Cold War, you have the Eastern Bloc countries. A lot of those countries adopt Russian ammunition types, calibers, and a lot of their war material, so AKs, SKSs, and their handguns, including the Makarov PM pistol. Now, countries to adopt this would be Bulgaria and China, as well as Eastern Germany, which was, of course, divided at the time. Now, in 1989, you have the falling of the Berlin Wall, which is a symbolic ending of the Cold War. You have reunification of Germany, and the Bundeswehr is, the new military force goes out to arms production, mainly at their plant in Suhl, and repurposes it into a sporting manufacturing facility. They have all these leftover Makarov parts and equipment, and they're trying to decide what they're going to do with them. So they decide that they're going to do a very short commercial production run of about 300 units. It's estimated that actually about 1,000 were manufactured and got imported into the United States. They put this really nice, fine, high-polished bluing on it. They modified the safety to improve it. These would be brought into the United States by CDI in about 1996, 1997, and they would all be sold by SOG Southern Ohio Gun, which unfortunately just went out of business about a year or two ago. They had a very low cost, about $200 to $300. But because only about 1,000 of these are manufactured, these are actually the rarest of the Makarov variants known to exist. So this is only one of 1,000 units. They can be identified quickly by The fact that they are noted as saying Simson Suhl on this side, made in Germany, CDI import mark there, and then it has Makarov 9x18 millimeter and a little gunsmith emblem here, and then the serial number. This is number 789. 789 out of 1,000. On the market today, you don't see them pop up very often, but when you do, you typically see them over $1,000, which rivals with about what you're going to pay for a military Russian Makarov. So that would probably make this about the highest valued Makarov out on the market today. Again, very few of them exist, and any Makarov collector, this is something that they would want to have in that collection. To sort of be the pinnacle or sort of the cornerstone of that collection. So not much else to say about it other than that. That's sort of the lineage and the rarity of this example. The history of the Makarov remains the same, of course, from our other videos. So you can go refer to last week's video for a more in-depth look at the Makarov PM pistol. But anyway, really happy to get that one in and share it with you guys. Last but not least, we have a very interesting and unique rifle that comes to us from a viewer in Ohio. This is an HK model SL7 roller delayed blowback 308 sporting rifle. Now the story with this would actually begin back in the 1950s with Ludwig Volgrimmler of Germany, who had gone to Spain to help them adopt what would later turn into their service rifle, the Setme Model C. Now, Germany had been paying attention, especially HK in Germany, with the success of this roller delayed blowback system. They would implement it into their own design, which is very much closely related to the Setme model, which will later be adopted by the German Bundeswehr as the G3 model, or the HK91 as we know in the commercial market as well. Now that system, the roller delayed blowback with the fluted chamber, had seen a lot of success, and its use was very much admired and appreciated in Germany by the Bundeswehr. HK wanted to come out with something for the commercial market that would use the same principles, the same action as the G3 or the HK91, but they wanted it to be unassuming, sort of not this military style package. They wanted to put it in a nice traditional wood stock. This is actually an extended magazine. The main magazine it would come with would fit more flush to the wood line, giving it the traditional looks of a sporting or a hunting rifle. Also would be a good use for police use as well. In 1983, they would come out with this model, which again used the roller delay blowback system. You had a cocking handle right up here to the right-hand side, which is very indicative of what you would find on a G3 model, where the cocking handle is up here in the cocking tube. You have to give it a nice pull to get it to unlock. Again, roller delay blowback. This does have the fluted chamber. 18-inch barrel, detachable magazine, does have the drum diopter rear sight. So a lot of similar features, but again, in a more palatable package for the consumer market. These would, again, go in production in about 1983 and stay in production until about 1991. Now, this particular one was made in 1984, so second year of production. It does have the 05 style HK claw mount, which is not too easy to find, and this one is in relatively good condition. So a good, nice, classic, collectible sporting rifle that again was really intended mainly for the consumer market and police use. On the U.S. consumer market today, of course, these are collectible because they are HK, and anything HK that's no longer made is collectible. These range in price from typically about the $1,500 to $2,500 range, depending on condition. Of course, original box, unopened, in that type of condition is going to be worth the most premium. So anyway, very interesting rifle. Not much else really to say about it, but just an interesting sort of brief staple from the HK lineup in the sporting market. So there it is, an HK SL7 308. Well, that is all the time I have for you today on these. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting that like button. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when I am posting new content. I'm going to leave you guys off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.